Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Tracy Doherty, so I lead the QuickSight product service team, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, if you were at Adam's keynote today, you saw some big news coming from our team, so that's exciting. It's a big day, big week. Appreciate you all being here. The thing I want to go through, and you'll see we'll have two speakers with us. David and Anush will I like to call the star of the show because there'll be people that really use this stuff in real life in our environment. I think will be super valuable for you to understand what they do and go through. But the first thing I'll start out with is, kind of have this theme, and this is probably obvious to everybody, the most valuable data. You hear it in many ways. Data is the new oil, it's the most valuable resource, et cetera, et cetera. There's even a stat that says, 90% of the data has been produced in the last 2 years in an abstract. But the number one thing I get asked by executives and customers, and even this week, in different forms, has been, hey, how do I get more value out of the data for my organization, employees, teams, and how do I drive a data-driven culture? Hey, you work at AWS, you must have all the answers to that. So we thought about that, and in some ways it's kind of the main mission of the QuickSight team of how do we provide more value to users, true end users from their data, and go through that. And so this talk is meant to help on that front. I hope it brings some interesting insights. David will come up and talk, and Nush will come up and talk and give some real world experience that comes along with that. So, I always like this slide because it seems so obvious, right? You have data, you want to put it to work, you want people to be able to make decisions faster, you want to just improve efficiencies. There's so many things that you want to do with data that I think oftentimes is not met, right? It's kind of got this great promise, but it's not met. There's data in here from Forrester, and I actually think this number, depending upon who you talk to, is high or low, but it says less than 20% of decision makers actually use a BI tool in an organization to make decisions. I locked that number in for you because I really want you to resonate how close is it to your organization and how real is it. The number I've usually seen in organizations is in this 25 to 30% range, which is still awful, I guess you would say, at the end of the day. David will come up and show you a number that will probably astound you of the progress they've made on that front. I'll leave it to him to show you what that number is. But I will tell you, myself and my team probably spend most of our time in the days and the evenings going, how do we help customers increase this number? How do we make it to be a larger number? My goal would be 60, 70, 80%. So how do we do that? And that's, by the way, that number has been almost the same percentage for the last 20 to 30 years, as long as I can remember. So it's kind of what it is. And that tells you, at the end of the day, we really do need a new approach, right? We need to think about things differently. And if you go through a little bit of the history, and I'll talk to this on BI over the years, and I even remember when I first started, it was all about reports. You had these highly formatted reports that central IT and this team built, governed, sent them out to you, and that's what you used. You didn't have any exploration. You didn't think about changing it. Then the second wave, and a lot of people like to call it modern BI. My running joke is don't call anything modern BI because it quickly becomes not modern, over time as you go through it. But modern BI was all about interactive dashboards and this promise that, hey, self-service, and everybody could find their own data and their own insights and go through that. And I'd always ask people, well, how well did we think that worked out? Right? And also it was this belief that it was going to replace reports. And that didn't happen either. They turned out to have kind of different value props. Sometimes they combined, but in many cases, different value props. Then the third wave was, hey, how do we use machine learning and code? And we'll get developers to just tell us what we need to know, and it'll give us all the insights. And that, is an ongoing effort. But none of these three things individually solve the problem of what we had and move the needle in a great way to rise that 20% up to something much higher. So, and there's reasons for that. If you think about these different pieces, and then you think of your data sources, and think of all the different types of data sources you have today, and what organizations run and manage them, and then the formats that you want them to be in. And what I mean by formats, do you want your information in an interactive dashboard? Do you want it in a formatted report? Do you want it in an application? Do you want it using NLQ so you can answer questions and get an answer back? And the answer to that is yes. There's not a, oh, I want that one. There's a combination of that. And the reason is because if you look to the right side of the type of users that you're dealing with, it's highly technical people that know the data inside and out. It's end users, it's machine people on the factory floor, it's doctors, it's nurses, it's executives. The breadth of users that you're trying to get insights to is varied in dramatic ways, and that's where the formats come in because they still use these things. Now you can imagine me, I lead the QuickSight team. I have some of the best dashboards probably built on the planet for me to analyze my business, and I look at them daily and go through that. But my most powerful thing that I get is a very formatted report that comes in on every morning at a certain time that I can see the difference between day 1 and day 2. That's actually the thing that I use. Now, if I've got an hour, I'll go use my dashboards and explore them to every great detail to go through that. In a sense, I'm pretending to be 2 different users, right, in that sense, 2 different personas. And so one wasn't going to solve both of my needs. I have 2 different needs. And I paint this because I think oftentimes this gets missed when people are sharing data that they think is great and they don't understand why all of their users don't also think it's great or equally valuable. So it's just a different perspective. So you mesh all that together and you kind of get in this world of a lot of silos of data, a lot of organizations of data, a lot of people sharing data, but to a whole broad set of users that may or may not see great value from it. So I'm probably overstating this slide to say the secret to a data-driven organization. I'll just say that up front, but it's some key things that go through that. And the first part, you got to start with authors, right? They're the people that and by the way, I'm using this generic term in authors that we use internally, which is the person who understands the data, but also can build a dashboard or a report in a way that they can share it with others to use. And so they understand the data, they hopefully understand the business to some level, but they determine that. This is a group that you kind of have to make the hero, if you will, of getting through that. But then the next part, and this is where I think a lot of systems have let people down, is the architecture that you want, right? If you want to get that number higher than 20%, you need an architecture that supports a much larger number of users, particularly concurrent. They need to be getting access to things in a very fast, performant way. The last thing you're going to do is expose the information to an executive and say, hey, this dashboard report only takes about 5 minutes to come up. It's all good. Just wait. You'll love it. That just doesn't happen. So you have to have that performance that goes along with that. The other thing is when you go to that scale, you need it to be priced in a way that matters. This material. It can't seem incredibly expensive because you'll fall back on only sharing data with those that you think will use it. And that's a fundamental thing that's been broken over time. And then you need it easy to manage. It's not a lot of fun to upgrade versions, upgrade servers, different things, upgrade client software. I mean, that's a nightmare if you're going to go at massive scale. If you're going to go small department-wise, you can get away with it, but not growing that 20% number. And then lastly, you have to really think about the end consumer because they're the ones that really use this and derive value from it. And so you got to think about what format do they want it in, what do they want to access it, do they want it on their mobile device, their PC, within an application. So you got to really think about that end part to raise that number as we go through it. And I'll come back to this slide later because there's one other secret sauce to this, but it may seem simplistic on it, but that middle piece of the architecture is kind of a key thing that stopped people. If, for example, you only thought you needed to support a small department, the whole middle section doesn't matter. But if you want to evolve from 20% to 50, 80%, then it does matter. And so that's the key part that we go through. And these superpowers, and I kind of described them, auto scale. And these are going to lead in, by the way, to a slide for QuickSight where you'll see some of our things that we looked at. You want it to auto scale regardless of the number of users or load that's out there. You want to have a unifying approach, which means you want to break down these silos and break down and give people the various formats that they want to see things in. You want it to be easy to manage. You don't really want to spend your time managing these things. You just want it to provide the value so you can spend the time on what insights you want to provide. And then lastly, consumption pricing. And we'll talk about that, why that's important. So when you think of QuickSight as a whole, and particularly you probably saw the announcement from Adam today on Q, but you also saw an important announcement on paginated reports, which is these very formatted reports that you can get. And we'll talk to it a little bit later, but the thing I'll highlight for you is it's one of our unifying strategies, because within the same authoring experience, you can create an interactive dashboard, or you can create a paginated report. And so you're not training, it's not two different systems, not two different tools, not two different sets of authors, it's all combined in that one experience. You want to be able to, the big thing, and that goes to point 2 of you want to build these experiences faster. You don't want to have heavy training or heavy load on that. You want high performance, consistent performance across the board. You will not believe how many customers I talk to that say with their legacy systems, yeah, at 9 o'clock, everybody comes in, they do this thing, they go get a cup of coffee, they come back and they're ready to roll, but yet it's moving great at 10:30. And you're like, why would you deal with that? The reason is, and we'll talk to it later, is because they're managing resources on the back end and you can't optimize it. We'll talk about how we take care of that. And then the last thing, and this is important and you'll see it at the very end of the deck, when I say lower cost consumption pricing, you want a system where you can give it to everybody, and if they don't use it, you don't get charged. If they use it a little, they get charged a little. If they get used a lot, then you want a fixed price, and we'll show you that part as well. Okay, so I kind of talked to this point a little bit, but this really highlights it. Product A for reports, product B for dashboards, product C for embedded analytics, product D for NLQ. Now, that's the worst case scenario. But in most cases, I talk to customers, they have multiple products kind of addressing a couple of these things. And so they never have one product for all of them. They have at least 2 to 3 products that they go through. That usually means 2 to 3 different engineering teams managing, supporting, and distributing the information from that. And you end up getting in a very siloed environment pretty quickly. So this was my point with QuickSight, is we wanted from the outset to combine these all into one thing. And if I wanted to tell just a quick story, and we have a slide later, but I've been with QuickSight now for, I think it's 5 years almost to the day. When I first started, the analogy I would give you was we had this amazing architecture. It could scale, it was fast, it was simple. I almost equate it to, imagine the very first electric car that had this brand new engine, and it could do these amazing things. Now let's imagine it could go a long range as well, which didn't happen. But imagine that. But then we forgot to give you seats and a windshield and some other basic, but it had the amazing piece with it, right? It turns out you add those pieces over time and you get really strong at it, but that architecture was the thing that was always going to be the hard thing to replace or invent or create. We were able to do that from the beginning because we built it as a cloud solution from day one, and with these tenets that we were going after. And so the plan all along was, we'll start with dashboards. We'll add reports later. We'll add NLQ. We'll add embedding. But it was always meant to start that way and then grow from there. The other thing, and this comes into this part, this architecture made this, and I remember this slide, it was used internally, a very similar one, which when we were explaining it to the team of most servers, when you go through it, when you have a server solution, you have somebody who's thinking about the max load capacity, normal capacity, how big they need it to be, and then they think about it over 3 years because they need it to last. So what that meant is you had about 2.5 years of waste, and then even at the end point, you didn't have it ideal. And then of course the worst nightmare is you got it wrong, and then you had big slowdowns, and then you added more performance. Well, then the next part was, hey, let's move it to the cloud. That will solve all of our problems. It helps, but it doesn't, because then you can have reserved instances for boost capacity at certain times, but you're still paying for more than you ideally want to have. So in QuickSight, we took the whole concept away because it's a serverless option up front. We don't sell a server. You don't buy capacity that way. You pay for users. We do all the scaling for you. And the benefit of that is you're always only paying for really what you're using along that line. You don't, and so when I tell customers all the time, they come in and go, yeah, but how much capacity do I need? I'm like, you don't have to worry about it. No, but where's the hidden cost? I'm like, there is no hidden cost. It's in our business model. That's what you pay. There's nothing else to think about. And it's once you get your head wrapped around it, it's actually a super powerful concept. But it's a different model, and I like to show it this way. Next thing, on easy to manage, same thing that goes through. if you have to deal with software upgrades, have to deal with client software, we removed all of that. It's a cloud service. There's none of that. We do all the updates for you. I'll show you a slide in a little bit of how many updates we do and new features that we go along, but there's no work to be done on managing the system. And that's super valuable at scale. And then our pricing. We do, for all of the bulk of what we call readers, we do a pay per session pricing. And so I'll show you a slide on that later, but it's basically a pay per usage model with a cap. And that's super important. It's allowed us to have, and we went in with the specific, I guess you'd say, dream, where I wanted to say to all of you, you can deploy it to everybody. If they don't use it, you don't pay. If they use a little, they pay a little. If they use it a lot, there's a fixed price that you will know ahead of time so you can account for it. And so that was always the goal of to change the game on that. And as a result, we now have over 100,000 users that's growing every day. 100,000 customers. I got to make sure I get that right. 100,000 customers today and growing fast of every industry that you can imagine. I'll get asked this question, hey, what verticals are you best in? I'm like, we're in all of them. You name it, automotive, medical, healthcare, finance, we have it all over the place. And so it's just a very fast growing environment, which is super exciting for us. Now, this gives you a little bit of history, and I was saying I've been with the team for 5 years, and I gave you my little no windshield car view. I don't know if that's the right way to think about it, but sometimes it is a valid thing. But in 18 is when we added the usage-based pricing. We also added the concept of readers, and that enabled large-scale deployments. The minute we did that, we started getting huge customer growth because it delivered on that pricing promise that I talked about. We then followed with machine learning insights and dashboard embedding. And again, it would make sense, right? If you can scale like mad, nobody builds an application not to scale. So then all of a sudden you can put all this power that's in this BI tool into your application and share analytics that way. And then ML Insights was our first iteration at that point of anomaly detection, forecasting, and those things built in. Then we went the next year, we added what we called OEM embedding. And what that meant is custom embedding so you could tailor it to look and feel like your application as opposed to just putting it raw out there. And there's a ton of customization that comes with that. And then Q was when we started working on Q, which is our natural language query application. By the way, the thing I'll say on that, and I get asked this all the time from analysts, press, customers, it's not keyword search based. It really is NLQ. And just a fun fact for you, data tells us that the same question by human beings is typically asked differently 6 to 10 different ways, right? So think about that for a minute. 6 to 10 different ways a question's asked that we need to translate and get the same answer back to and go through that. You only really get there through NLQ. So you let people ask their different ways, then you can look at the back end and see how they were asked and then make better dashboards or reports because of it. So it's a super powerful concept that I don't think we even realized going into it. And then last year was alerts, personalization, a ton of BI features across the board. We do on average, we used to say we did a feature a week. That was typically 52 features if I do my math right. This year we're 80 plus and going, so we've maintained this high velocity of feature development and innovative things going forward. And then the 3 things that you'd heard Adam talk about, one is the paginated reports. There's another session tomorrow on detail on that. I'll let you guys go to that for all the great details on that. In our queue, we added different capabilities around asking forecasting questions and why questions. The reality is we had a lot of forecasting technology built in, but we didn't have it as part of queue. And then why is this thing of, hey, why did my sales drop? And then be able to get a set of data that gives you a point of view or things to look at and go for there. So two big areas of growth. In there, and then visual embedding we launched that about a month ago, which allows you to embed individual visuals in your application as opposed to just the dashboard. And this makes sense. You go to your homepage, any of you pick your financial app. What's the first thing you see? It comes up and shows you a chart of what your balance is or what the trends are, and then you have a different place where you look at the heavy duty details. This is a a new enhancement that we did this year and is taking off and helps our embedding story in a big way. So if you go to the next slide, this gives you, a word cloud version of the 80 plus features. I didn't do the count to see if all 80 are in there. It gives you a strong sense of what came in there, though. Obviously, not all of these are the same amount of effort and work. Some of these take a lot of time to go through, but there's new connectors, new visuals, new customization, new question types, a whole formatting type, a whole new reader experience. So the UX on the reader experience changed this past year to be crisper, more professional looking. So a lot of really good work that went in over the year to do that. Now, if you look at the bulk of these things, though, I will still challenge you guys to all go back and think about it this way. The reason we do it is to get more and more users in an organization to use the tool to get value from their data. Right? It's just like this obsession to get off of that 20% number and get it much, much larger. And in many of these, I can look at almost every single one of them and tell you how they kind of tie into that. The thing I didn't mention on this slide, this is where I kind of said, hey, the secret to having a data-driven culture and helping people with insights and all of that. The reality is you can have all of this stuff that I mentioned. You can have this perfect product. Let's imagine there's a perfect product. But you can imagine there's a perfect product. It scales, it's priced right, it has all the features you need, et cetera, et cetera. You still don't have the full piece. The other piece you have to have is working with someone who is willing to hear you, listen you, and adapt and change over time. Because show me the best dashboard today, and I will show you an organization 8 months later that's lost interest in that dashboard, has a bunch more questions and wants it to be changed, right? And different features and different formats that you want to go through. So the reality is we're in a world of change and adapt and going through that. And the reason I tie that back to our 80 plus features, 90% of those features are customer requests, either a new customer that's going to sign up for us or existing customers. The other 10% is us looking around corners, predicting what's going to be needed and going along with that way. So you kind of have to work with a partner that believes in that same philosophy and is going to adapt and change and go through with you on that. So having said all that, you can listen to me all day long, preach this stuff. But what I wanted to do was have a real customer come up who has been through this journey, what has been the last 16, 18 months of going through that. David, he'll come up. He leads our WWSO Insights organization. I'll let him tell you what that means. I will just say it serves thousands of users. So I'll give you that sneak peek. He will give you the real thunder on some of the things they've done, and then Nusha will come up after that.
Thank you, Tracy. So good afternoon, everybody. I've been with Amazon for just over 2 years. I run the Worldwide Specialist Organizations Insight team. The Worldwide Specialist Organization exists to help you as a customer derive the best value from our complex technologies like AI, ML, analytics, database, storage, edge, etc. The team exists to help you realize that value and also to help you adopt new products and make sure there's successful adoption in your environments. The team that I run is basically like any other business intelligence team. We have builders, we have Python developers, we have SQL people, we have advanced analytics. We also have a whole supporting cast inside of Amazon that helps us build our systems, our data engineers, our business intelligence engineers. So we bring all of those resources together to help us drive insights and data and analytics to power the WWSO organization. And similar to Tracy's slide, there are multiple personas within our organization. Frontline people working with the customers, executives that want executive summaries, like the reports that Tracy was talking about, the paginated reports. We have solutions groups, solutions architects, and so forth. So the data that we're providing helps these people make informed choices. And with QuickSight, that scales out really quickly and is really fast in achieving that. Not only that, we are on the pathway to deriving a data-driven organization. So we basically extend that data outwards to the whole of AWS as well, where people need that information in a secure manner. making sure we are respectful of various data privacy laws, various other laws that are around, which means that people can only see what they're entitled to see. Again, we then share that with our partner organization who are interested in customer adoption on our services. We work with the sales organization to align our insights and data to avoid what I call like analytical collisions. My number says X, your number says Y. We become the single source of truth for all of that data that then enables the data-driven discussion to occur. So how do we do it? First off, we start with the customers. How do we serve you as a customer? What products are you using? What products are you likely to use? Where are you on your journey when we look at you compared to some of the other customers? We, of course, have the other pieces which are the standard. If you've been in sales or you're in any kind of leadership role, the business performance, how's your revenue doing? What's your pipeline doing to support it? Are you going to hit your target? Are you going to hit your plan? Bringing those two together, we then start to build out strategic planning. So what are our customers looking to use? How are they looking to use it? How are we performing? We then bring that to the strategic planners. Where do we focus? We are a scarce, as you know, Amazon has a frugality leadership principle. We have frugal resources that we need to apply to those customers that need the most help or on certain journey points on their journey path. So using all of this together, we enable the strategic planning across the WWSO organization and also share that outwards and onwards with our AWS colleagues as well. We have 450 dashboards. That's a lot. And I'll talk about why there's a lot there right now. And that's because when we migrated from our legacy business intelligence platform, we did a lift and shift. And then we also enabled, as is our want in Amazon, our builder mentality, we enabled users to build their dashboards. As Tracy was talking about earlier, accessibility inside of QuickSight to the data for people to be able to build stuff is great. And one of the side effects of that sometimes is you get data sprawl. And we've got a little bit of that right now, being vocally self-critical, which we'll come back to. We've just been innovating at pace and at scale, allowing the users to do that. On average, we have 3 to 5 data sources per dashboard. What we've done, and I'll cover it a bit later on, is we've standardized a lot of our data sets. So we have our revenue, our pipeline, and our headcount. Our headcount allows us to understand where we're deploying our resources, so we make sure we're making the right choices with that scarce resource. The majority of our usage I talk about later is coming from 30 dashboards. Those dashboards are built by my team and other teams inside the organization in collaboration with us to make sure we have standardized views of the dashboard. And we also have row-level security to make sure people can only see what they should be seeing, when they can see it, to derive that value. We have a massive data lake. It's 2.1 petabytes in size. That was one of the main reasons why we effectively moved to QuickSight, was because our legacy system couldn't cope with that data set. One of our largest data sets alone is 500 terabytes of historical data. So we needed a system that could scale, was secure, and was easily usable by the teams and by the groups. That kind of leads me on to this next slide here, which is, the adoption. I mean, 50% was where we started. That was back at the beginning of the year. We were halfway through our migration. That's 50%, just to be clear, of the worldwide services specialist organization using our systems in the last 60 days. So users have come in, used it, looked at it, done what they've needed to do to achieve that value. Over time, as we've progressed, we've added insights, we've added metrics, we've added more data. We've worked closely with our stakeholders, and this is a key part of this journey, is when we first started, we commissioned a report internally on what our users wanted to see, what they wanted to use. That formed the framework at the start of our migration. We then set up stakeholder communities and stakeholder groups with those teams to understand what exactly is it you're looking to use this system for. Performance, insights, predictability. We started to build that stuff with them, and my team and others have basically collaborated with those end users to build that data set, to build those dashboards. Are we perfect? No. We're on a journey. We've got more to go. We've got things to use that the QuickSight team are giving us, bits like the QuickSight questions, the ML insights, all of those great flexibilities. So as we evolve as an organization, we started with the reporting, then we'll start adding more and more capability, more and more predictions. And then the great thing I heard this morning was about the pagination, and we'll start to basically bring that in as well. So that over the year, the growth has grown to 215% and 157% in users. Just to give you a context, that's over 80,000 unique impressions every month and over 8,000 users a month using the system. Exiting this year on the current trajectory, our platform will effectively deliver over 1 million impressions on dashboards to the whole organization. That's massive in terms of scope across the organization. And as I keep on telling my team, we've only just started. We've got to get to more insight, to more action-orientated insights, and then this will grow even further. But the secret here is to work with your stakeholder community to understand what they want, to build what they want. Sometimes, as I say to my team, sometimes, and we're the same, we build dashboards by analysts for analysts, and what I've seen when I look at my adoption statistics, those ones tend to be the lowest. Where you start to derive the value, the insights, the learnings, the intelligence, that's when the adoption starts to kick off. So my theory is work with those stakeholders better, and you will get more adoption. That's basically what we've done here to achieve these goals. The starting point was the same as anybody else. Effectively, we had technical challenges. We had unstructured big data. The 2.1 petabytes I talked about earlier is now structured, and I'll talk about what we did there in a couple of slides. The poor performance was there. I mean, it was taking 4 or 5 minutes. As Tracy said, go make a cup of coffee and effectively come back and your dashboard would open. I experienced this myself last week when I was on an offsite in a different part of the globe. We opened up a dashboard and some of the teams are still using the legacy system. And I said, come back in 3 minutes, and boom, in 3 minutes it was there. One of the things that we do in our systems is every dashboard needs to open in under 30 seconds to give an insight. That was a target that we set ourselves, and the vast majority of them do. If they don't do that, then we come back and we look at it and we try and figure out why. Why is it slow? Is it somebody's code? Is it somebody's filters? Is it somebody built some complexity in there? The other thing that we found when we were migrating the system was siloed reporting. A lot of the data and the insights were captured in this legacy business intelligence system by people doing custom data sources, custom metrics, and so forth. We have unleashed a lot of that into our standard data sets so that now, again, driving the adoption, those things are unleashed. We look at the best practices and we try and apply those across the board. The final point here, which is an interesting one, is the ROI justification. And when people think about ROI, they tend to think about money. And of course, everything goes back to the dollar or the pound or the cent or the euro. But at the end of the day, what the true unlocking of the return on investment here was in people's time. The legacy system we had took 2 or 3 people to manage security, complexity, data sets. That was eliminated with QuickSight. We don't have that anymore. The time to open those dashboards, if you multiply, for example, 2 or 3 minutes by, 80,000 views over a month, you're talking 160,000 minutes. Do the math on that in terms of productivity, in terms of time, scale that across the organization, and then you see actually the hidden cost of a slow business intelligence system is not necessarily the licensing cost or the compute cost. It's actually the interpersonal cost of waiting for that thing to load. So that's all the time you're getting back when you start using these quick systems. So the reason for QuickSight, I think I've summarized most of these already. In terms of performance, we've talked about that, the speed of the load. The flexibility, which is what we're going to be exploring in the next 12 months, is around ML insights, Q, embedding, making that content more usable, making it more relevant, making it so that it's quicker for the teams to get to the insights. You know, that 3-minute load, great, you've solved that problem, but it still takes me 10, 15, 20 minutes, scouring around different dashboards to get the answer to my question. That's our next piece on the effectiveness journey that we'll be coming to, is basically making this system more effective. And I can't thank the QuickSight team enough. When we go through these migrations, when we're working with this piece, we've had a very tight relationship with Tracy, Joe's, Jesse, and the SA team. When we've had issues, we've had them fixed. And some of the big things that helped us migrate was the level of detail calculation pieces. Before that, it was a bit sticky trying to get some of the stuff done, but those extra pieces of features that have been added have actually helped us a lot. So how do we do it? There are 4 things I want to kind of say that are success criteria for any migration, and this should be obvious in some ways, but we learned a lot as we went through it. The first one is data standardization. You have to have standard data. If you don't have that, you have unstructured data. How do you join it together? How do you build together the revenue to the pipeline to the headcount, or the revenue to the pipeline to the usage? How do you bring those metadata together? If you don't bring it together, you're not multiplying the value. You're not bringing the insights. You're not bringing the action. So that data standardization was really important. The second thing was around the row-level security. We have got, and it's by no means perfect, and we've got a way to go, but we have a fairly good row-level security design that actually allows us to take an individual specialist or an individual seller and make sure they can see what they can see inside of their territory. So if I'm a salesperson in California, I log into the Amazon system. My dashboard only shows me the California information. That's really powerful at scale. And we've joined together some of the internal AWS systems, created this RLS table that does a reasonable job, but we've still got some issues on the scale, which we're working through. The third piece is around addressing the change management. Moving from a legacy business intelligence system to something like QuickSight. While QuickSight is fantastic, there's change. And we should never underestimate change. To mitigate that change, what we did is we put into place a technical tiger team. That technical tiger team were a bunch of early adopters who were skilled in visualization, SQL, and data. We wrapped that team around our users to help them move. Because at the end of the day, if we don't address that change management, people aren't going to move. We had a goal established that we needed to move everybody with the QuickSight team. And we did that by July 31st. But we only did that because we wrapped up a ton of, we had 4 people on my team working with the users to migrate them in terms of SQL efficiency, unlocking those siloed reports, and basically making sure that we were on a standard visualization. Again, we've got work to do, but that's how we moved there. And the final thing is around prioritization. We had a rule of 45. If your system, if your dashboard wasn't viewed 45 times in 45 days, it wasn't a priority for me. And in that way, we basically allowed the prioritization. If you look at the legacy system that we had there, over 400 dashboards, how do you move those? It's simple. The number of users, the importance to the user, all of those things, you have to prioritize ruthlessly to make it happen. If you try and migrate everything at once, then you'll end up not moving forward very quickly. So to summarize, the challenges we wanted to achieve were to build faster, scale effortlessly, and consume more. We worked in partnership with the QuickSight team to achieve this. And how we basically started to do this was we spoke to the customers, we innovated, we got the feedback, we innovated again. And we work on a ticketing system in my team, and the majority of the tickets that we get on a daily basis is, hey, I would like to see this, or hey, I need access to this. We are constantly trying to innovate and move things forward for the customer. Like every other team, we have some constraints, which means we may not be doing it as quick as we want, but we are innovating at scale, and we listen to our stakeholders. That then drives a data-driven organization that I showed you earlier. By listening and innovating and sharing across AWS, we effectively give these data sets and these charts and these tables and these reports to the whole organization to align the organization to make that happen. That's a whole different story, alignment. But if you get that alignment across the organization, it's really powerful and unleashes a lot of things. Working with the QuickSight team, we innovated in the partnership. Again, the feedback we've given Tracy, Joe's, and others, maybe we need to look at these features, maybe we need to add these features. They've been really receptive and a great partner. In fixing all of these things together, we start to enable this self-service. And this self-service is a key important point as we go forward. We're talking about QuickSight Q, we're talking about ML insights, we're talking about learnings. On that point, I'd like to introduce Anusha to the stage. Anusha works on my team. She's been with us for 18 months or so. Anusha, over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Anusha, and as David mentioned, I've been here for 18 months with AWS, working on some of the key projects to support our customers. And today I will be talking to you on how we are actually driving from data to outcomes by leveraging some of our current use cases and the dashboards to address the same. So the key goal for us initially was to get the foundation right, and by foundation we mean data. So we've got we've got a lot of data sources, and we wanted to standardize them. So we've created these standardized data sets. And once we have that, we also had some of our legacy BI dashboards that tracked the key business KPIs. So, I mean, we did have these dashboards, but we did have a lot of problem with the adoption. And today I'm going to be walking you through the activities dashboard to help you understand how we've navigated it. So, the activities dashboard, the goal of this is to understand how our sales specialists are engaging with the customers and helping them adopt the product. And this was one of the key dashboards for us. But on the legacy BI system, like the specialist could actually click on a certain drill down or a filter, go for a cup of coffee for 5 to 10 minutes and be back to see the view loaded. And that's not really very productive for them. And this was even before like row-level security was established. With row-level security added, the load times increased further. So we had to, kind of work around the row-level security issues and, compromise on the views. And that's not the way we wanted to work, and that led to the transition to QuickSight as well. And with QuickSight, the response time actually reduced to less than 10 seconds. And that was a massive change, which kind of helped improve the performance. And we had to certainly compromise on some of the visualizations, but at the end of the day, the performance was so good that we were good with compromising on that. And this was with the inbuilt row-level security at the level of granularity we needed. So that was a win-win for us. And tracking the KPIs is definitely great, but we wanted to take it a step further and provide some customer-level predictive insights for our salespeople, so that they can serve customers more proactively than reactively. With that in mind, we have created a service recommender model or dashboard where it's a machine learning-based model which recommends the next best service or services for the customer. And we are using QuickSight as a platform to deliver these insights to the sales. And we are also collaborating very closely with them to get the feedback and make sure that our recommendations are aligned with the customer needs. So this is just one of the insights that we've generated, right? And there are like multiple different insights, and those are spread across different dashboards. And we always knew that we had to bring all these different insights from different dashboards together. And at Amazon, we are definitely customer obsessed, and we work backwards from the customer to understand how exactly can we serve the customer better. So we had interactions with sales, through direct interactions or through workshops. And these are some of the feedback that we have received from them. And the common sentiment across each of these is that, we do have insights across these multiple dashboards. Right now, we are extracting it, putting all that together, but that's not really effective, like an efficient use of salespeople's time. So how do we make sure that it's productive for sales? So we've gathered all that feedback. Now, based on this info, we've put all these info together and created a dashboard which helps understand the customer needs better for sales, and this also improved the sales productivity. And in the last 1 year, we have partnered with the QuickSight team a lot, and going forward in 2023, we do plan to increase our productivity and drive the scale of our decisions by accelerating these metrics to outcomes and reducing the number of dashboards and providing more streamlined decision insights for them, and embedding these dashboards into some of the internal portals so that they are more accessible and more frequently updated. And as Tracy mentioned, the natural language queries, we plan to integrate them as well, so that on top of the insights that we have already, if the stakeholders or executives want to understand something from the data, it's right there. They could do that. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tracy.
So Thank you both. By the way, I think they're pretty. How many of you would love to have 83% adoption across your org using a BI tool? When we first started working with them and they said they're at 50% and they wanted to get to 100%, I could be skeptical like anybody else, but 83% is astonishing. And then you also get a sense from them of that's not enough. They want to keep pushing and going forward on that front. Now, having said that, they're one of many teams in Amazon that are serving thousands of users. And just to give you maybe I'm humble on this statement, but it's super valuable. We have in Amazon over 200,000 active QuickSight users going through that. Now, I don't know of another company that can make that, another platform that can make that statement going through that, because there's just not that many companies that have that many employees. But when you think of that, that's actives. That's not signed up using it. That's actives on a monthly basis as we go through that. And that's been a massive growth within the last couple of years. And mostly due to partnering with those teams. Amazon, to know its culture, doesn't have a push down method. There was no, hey, thou shalt use this. It's everybody can have their own choices based upon the value that's there. But we've had tremendous growth on that front. So thank you, David and Anusha. So I go back to this. I like this slide. It's just the partnership is what makes that work, right? At the end of the day, it's people going through and reacting and interacting and taking their feature set. David didn't say it, of the 80 new features that we added, he could probably put his name by many of those, and other customers as well. And so that's a great effort that he mentioned Jose and Jesse all have been on the team since, early days. Now lead big parts of the organization. They're actually quite accessible. If you hadn't heard their names before, you can find them this week. They're here and about, and they'll be happy to chat with you as well. So I'll leave you with a couple slides. You kind of probably heard me in the beginning. I hate this term of modern BI because things change and blah, blah, blah. But I will say, if you can imagine reimagining BI, what would you want that experience to be? You'd want it. Imagine if all of your users were delighted and get insights quickly. Imagine if all of your authors were heroes in the organization and people were excited to see what they produced. Imagine a world you're not managing hardware, thinking about hardware, software updating. The other thing is, you've got to be flexible. I will say that multiple times, and this is what I love about David and Nusha when they talk. They've got 83%, and all they talk about is what they can do better to go through that, and you kind of have to be relentless on that. And then lastly, the trusted partner that you can work with. So you probably want your cameras out for this. This is unless you have it in the app too, but these are upcoming workshops today and tomorrow. You can talk to many members of the team. Expertise, I think you'll find them extremely passionate to talk to you and help you in any way possible to go through that. We've already had a couple, I think in a couple of these were embargo sections, so they weren't known about, and they've been recently listed out, but please go tackle that and enjoy the talks on that. I do know, Brat, you can help me, but I think it's 2 o'clock tomorrow, I think is the paginated reports session in there somewhere. I can't see it, but it's on there. But I'd look for those, because there's some good talks coming up on that and working sections. The other thing is go to the kiosk in there, go to the booth. There's some swag, but more than anything, that's not the important part. There's just a set of people that would love to hear from you and your experiences and how they can help. And like I said, 80 new features this year. The second thing that I would say is the most common that I have when I talk to customers is they come and say, hey, I'd really like feature A and feature B. And I'm like, that's awesome. We launched that last week. We launched that today. We launched that a month ago. Oh, I didn't know. So that tends to be my common phrase as we go through the week now. And then the last thing, join the QuickSight community. It's a dedicated site up there. It's an easy thing to do. It's super valuable. You'll get insights from users that are out there. You'll be able to help if you're an advanced user as well. So there's a lot of encouragement to go along with that. So I guess for me, a big thank you for all of you coming out, spending your time here. There's many things to do this week.